back in July 2025, when there were some influencers posting videos of how they were literally burning their MAGA hats. It was quite the image you can see here. It was stunning to some who are accustomed to the talk about a president who has such a loyal MAGA base. But this, of course, was just a few people. What was notable was the charred hats. We didn't even know which people they were. Tonight, it's not about burning hats. It's about burning bridges by very important MAGA leaders, the kind with millions of followers, not just the kind with a video camera and a hat. Tucker Carlson has gone beyond criticism to formally split with Trump. You've probably heard about this story if you follow the news, and for good reason. It is a huge deal. It is a break with Trump that it would be very hard to undo, and it speaks to a larger problem in the early lame duck period of this troubled second term. Tucker cast his defection as more than a choice. He basically said it was a moral necessity, a matter of conscience. He's even mused about a sort of religious failing, a possible evil or anti-Christ element working within Donald Trump. Fact check, way above my pay grade, but that's the level of vitriol, of moral judgment against his one-time ally, Donald Trump. Tonight, we can tell you another former Fox host with a similarly large MAGA following, Megyn Kelly, is channeling, frankly, the liberal critique of Trump that you've heard since at least 2015 when he burst on the political scene. That Trump is unfit for office because of his immorality, his character, his temperament. She also adds in the particular pain of former Trump backers who have found, often in public, that there is no loyalty in return with him. No matter how loyally you serve him, even, for example, as his vice president for the whole term, or in the rooms giving him national security advice only to find yourself indicted. It's the familiar refrain of people who did serve him loyally only to run into what Kelly, and I'm going to show you the clip, now calls his demon-like response. Notice how Tucker and Kelly both reached for the occult, the supernatural, the good versus evil frame, which is more than blue versus red, I would remind us. The issue is that Trump went on to try to ruin the lives of his own aides, Kelly, Bolton, Cohen, Vice President Pence. It's a pattern. That's what they found last term. We all witnessed it. And so someone who would do that to people who served him loyally, who he broke bread with, whose families he knew, how would he treat the rest of the unknown MAGA fans or soldiers or citizens paying their higher gas prices? If he doesn't care about them, he certainly doesn't care about you. And apparently Megyn Kelly and her audience are discovering that now.
There are aspects of his personality which are obviously not good and that we've mostly just chosen to overlook. You know, he's not a moral man. He's obviously not the greatest husband in the world. And he's extremely petty and thin-skinned, extremely petty and thin-skinned. You know, there's no loyalty in return ever from Trump, ever. At this particular moment, he's alienating so many of his core supporters. Some of those darker demons are much more in the front view right now.
Demons, petty, amoral, alienating everybody. That's Megyn Kelly. This is a kind of breakdown that is now haunting Trump's second term at probably one of the worst possible times. Certainly since the war has been a tough time for him going into the midterms. This is not a politics story like when you turn on the news and the top story is an election or what political people are saying or a story about a politician. It's not really that. This is a politics responding to reality story. As people see Trump's war boosting the real prices they're paying right now, from gas to groceries, a war with no apparent endgame. Americans overwhelmingly sour on Trump's economy. Remember, that's part of what got him elected, a vow to improve the economy, to lower prices. 56% say he's hurting the economy. A paltry 28% thinks he's helping. Megyn Kelly is joining along with Tucker Carlson, who was even more emphatic than her because he's ditched Trump for good. And he didn't just say, I'm out. He said, I'm out, and I'm sorry I was ever in. He literally apologized for the 2024 backing like it was some kind of moral failing, something to reckon with, his consciousness, if you favor that Tucker-esque discourse. Now, Trump sees these people ditching, and he knows they matter. Podcast titan Joe Rogan has been criticizing Trump on immigration, on deploying soldiers to U.S. cities, and on the war. Now, he didn't give a burning bridge announcement the way Tucker did, and so it was noticeable that this White House tried to warm up the famously independent media star with an invite for a different issue that Rogan also covers. And you can see him there directly behind the president, the issue of the drug war and the possible benefits of psychedelics. Now, Rogan attended, he spoke a bit, but you got to give some credit to Rogan's independence. He got that big access. There are a lot of people in media and politics who would be thrilled on the right to go join the MAGA Republican president in the Oval Office, flanked by other cabinet officials, might mute their criticism at least for a month. So credit to Rogan. That access did not quiet what he says are his genuine concerns about Trump's war. Here he was again today.
How this is ever going to work out, I really don't know. How do you get out of this? And then what does the exit look like? Do we have troops over there forever now? Do we subsidize them if we blow up their power grid and all their infrastructure? It doesn't make sense they choose to do it when they did it.
Fair questions, plain English, clear critique, and he didn't just mute it for 2 weeks or do some sort of transactional thing. He's just doing what he does with millions of people listening. 70% also say the economy is not only bad, like I showed you, but in a separate polling question, that it is getting worse, which reflects a downcast view of the Trump economy and what people likely perceive as the war problem going into the midterms. People don't expect this to happen overnight, that we would get improvement. Fox News noting the economic gloom, the bad Trump ratings signal tough GOP midterms, and the channel also reporting on what it has referred to at times as the Trump government's incompetence.
New polls show people are not confident that our government is competent, and the president's approval rating stands at 42%. He's way behind on inflation, the economy, and government spending.
And that's just one poll. Trump is even lower in others. A third of Republicans unhappy with his leadership. The MAGA audience that Fox and Tucker and Kelly speak to has clearly found more skepticism of Trump. Democrats have a 6-point advantage in the generic battleground ballot. That's from the nonpartisan Cook Political Report. It matches this situation. There is some time between now and the midterms. But again, there isn't any clear evidence that a lot of this would change overnight, because, as I mentioned, this is not a politics story, by which we mean the ideologies and the brands and the things that people say in exchange about politics, in person and online. This is a reality story, or as our friend James Carville said, an economy stupid story, but not just politics. The spike in gas prices is a war tax. It's hitting home. And there are reports on the broader problems in the war Trump started, where there isn't a good endgame. A fifth of the world's oil is now blocked. That is a worse position than we were in before this war started. The Pentagon today has told Congress that even when this strait is reopened as they hope, it would be a slow rebound. 6 months to clear out the mines that are in there because of the war. Gas prices elevated through the midterms. This war of choice by Trump is also now the biggest energy threat in history, according to the International Energy Agency. And as Americans pay, as if this was all not bad enough in the very measurable ways that it is bad and worse than before Trump got involved, everyone would be happier in America and at the pump if he just didn't do things, if he just wasn't president, or at least president on Iran policy. That's true of even MAGA supporters. But amidst all that, the Trump administration's corruption deepens in public. And I'll just tell you this, as someone who's kind of covered a lot of this, as a reporter and a lawyer, it could take years of thorough, independent, and I would hope nonpartisan investigations to even get to the bottom of the Trump swamp corruption. The second term, unlike anything we've seen in the modern era, worse than Nixon measurably in the amount of graft. The crypto, the payoffs, the self-dealing, the alleged market and betting manipulation, which must be investigated because we don't know how high it goes. There's clear reports and evidence, for example, of abuse of insider information. We don't know if it goes all the way up to the top of the White House or the upper middle range of cabinet members or lower middle. It's a problem for the U.S. either way. It has to be investigated if we care about it. Remember, bribery is also an enumerated impeachable offense if anyone got involved in bribery that touches on the president. Again, that has to be investigated, not assumed, investigated, but boy, is there a lot of smoke out here. And that brings me to this conflict of interest drawing huge concern today as you, the American people, quite literally pay much higher prices for this open-ended war. Donald Trump's son, Eric, has scored a $24 million contract with the Pentagon for his company.
Foundation Future Industries, a robotic startup, aims to develop these autonomous humanoid robots. The company just secured a $24 million contract with the Pentagon and the company's chief strategy advisor, Eric Trump, President Trump's son. Congratulations to you both.
Coming from hospitality, the uses are unlimited. But, you know, Maria, you're just talking about China. You know, we are America first. We have to win this race.
The sound you hear is of Trump breaking two vows at once: drain the swamp and end forever wars. Pentagon budget ballooning in requests under this war, the price of the war ballooning that you're paying. The swamp, as you see, is active. Even if it doesn't reach the level of criminality, it is an obvious, illicit, scandalous conflict of interest to be paying off your son through the Pentagon in the same way that Republicans used to worry about much, much, much smaller sums allegedly from a Biden son. And by the way, if any of that much smaller amount of money was only a product of his dad being president, it was also wrong, as we would report here. But however wrong it was as a measurable corruption matter, it has now been dwarfed by this Trump swamp while you pay for it. Donald Trump's family is profiting, quite relatedly to his unilateral choice to bomb Iran and get more money for the Pentagon while everyone else pays the costs. If you wonder why Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly are mad, those are some reasons, plus their audience. If you wonder why their audience is mad, well, that's obvious. And then the question becomes, how mad is everyone going to get going into the voting booth in November?